What happens when you're faced with a moral dilemma? What I mean is, what happens when your values collide? These dilemmas are often solved automatically in our daily choices based on our moral values and personal convictions. At the time of this recording, people are raising ethical concerns over the C-19 vaccine. It's not so much the administering of the vaccine itself, but rather making it mandatory for employees to keep their jobs. This puts countless individuals at risk of losing their livelihoods and careers. When faced with such dilemmas, how should the Christian respond? What does the whole decision process look like? I will offer you some insight within a rational biblical worldview. First, let me ask you this. Does your decision present a moral evil, or do you simply have a strong conviction against it? Our convictions ought to be based on Scripture, but they don't always. Sometimes they're a matter of personal preference. It's not unusual to find Christians that attempt to fit the Bible into their way of thinking, rather than allowing the Bible to transform their convictions. If we're not careful, we might be at risk of losing everything for the sake of something we don't prefer, but isn't necessarily inherently unbiblical. Going back to the contemporary issue of mandatory vaccinations, is the vaccination inherently evil? Are you concerned with how it's being mandated? And it's okay if you are, but there's more to consider here. Yes, there is an ethical distinction between mandating what can be enforced outside our bodies, such as a mask, and inside our bodies, such as vaccinations. However, the method of the administration doesn't cancel out the potential usefulness of the vaccine itself. To deny the vaccine based on the principle of how it's enforced are two separate ethical issues. Second, I want you to consider this. Are you being logically consistent? This is an important point. We don't want to cherry pick the hills that we die on. For instance, if you're willing to lose everything to avoid being vaccinated, but you're conceding in other areas where your rights are limited by laws or where your beliefs are suppressed by the social norms, then you may appear stubborn or even prideful, but most of all, inconsistent. Let's face it, we all work and live in a world that is less than ideal, much less godly. We must learn how to be a Joseph in Egypt or a Daniel in Babylon. Third, reflect on the question, are you making a decision that promotes the most good? If you find the result of your choice actually brings about more evil than good, you might need to think deeper about your options. The Bible tells us, be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. So what if vaccines are made mandatory for you? Losing your job could be a loss of income, benefits, retirement, healthcare, provision for your family, financial turmoil, limited access to public spaces, and the list goes on. And listen, those are serious consequences to avoid getting a vaccine, which has the potential to save lives. Rejecting the vaccine doesn't appear to overcome evil in this given scenario, nor to promote goodness. And lastly, have you asked God for wisdom? Wise decisions are sought out with diligent prayer. James instructs us that if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. You are held accountable to God for the decisions that you make. Their impact ripples far beyond your own body. It has far-reaching physical and emotional effects on your family, friends, church, and community. Be careful to seek God, not your political party, personal preferences, Western values, or thoughts on governance. Those latter things will pass away, but God is the ultimate source of truth. We must make the most reasonable decision according to Scripture and trust God with the outcome. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. When you're faced with moral dilemmas, discern its biblical moral value, remain logically consistent, promote goodness, and ask God for wisdom. Actual faith makes decisions within a biblical worldview, not outside of it. If you're new to the actual faith community, subscribe to this channel and tap the like button if you're enjoying the content. This channel is committed to strengthening the faith of Christians while providing answers to the skeptics.